This is the book Winchee, Mission Stories of Colin and Melva Winch by S Ross Goldstone. The true adventures of missionary pilots and nurses in the South Pacific, as retold to the children of Watertown SDA Church. I'm your storyteller, Austin Bacchus. Let's go! All right, today's chapter is entitled Living with the Unexpected. The Winch family had driven in their Toyota Corolla station wagon to the markets in Honiara and had done their fruit and vegetable shopping in the native market. On completion of this task, they all had the treat of a soft-serve ice cream. Colin noticed that the ice cream tasted a little sour and concluded it was just going off. He continued to eat his, as did Melva, Carrie, Nerily, and Chris, but Carol was having difficulty with hers. She didn't like the taste. As they drove across the one-way bridge crossing the small river near the Honiara township, she complained her ice cream was yucky. She wasn't eating it, and it was starting to drip down onto the car seat. So in frustration, Colin told her to wind down her window and throw it into the river. She did, but a national man who was walking in the opposite direction on the pedestrian walkway of the bridge caught the full impact of the sticky, melting ice cream in his face. The children screamed, "Dad, put your foot down, floor it!" Colin wanted to stop and apologize to the man, but he was in the middle of a one-way bridge, and there were cars following behind, plus cars in front waiting to make the crossing. Colin felt he had to respond to the demands of his giggling children, so reluctantly, Colin sped away, and the aggrieved national soon gave up chasing after them. Another mishap occurred in the Solomon Islands in 1956 when Colin was appointed superintendent of the Amias Memorial Hospital and district director of the district. Sailing on the Varivato, Colin and Melva took 7 hours to make the crossing to Choisul, then to a beautiful protected harbor at Catalusa village where they planned to stay for the Sabbath. On Sabbath morning, Colin went ashore in the dinghy, sending it back with the boat crew to pick up Melva and their handsome little adopted Solomon Island boy, Gallo. However, as Melva, with Gallo under one arm, went to step aboard the dinghy from the stern of the Varivato, the dinghy separated from the mothership by a couple feet, and Melva and Gallo fell into the clear waters of the harbor. Although unscheduled, it was a pleasant Sabbath morning dip. Both were totally submerged, but fortunately little Gallo, still in Melva's arms, came up laughing, thinking it was great fun. He was handed to the embarrassed crew, and Melva clambered aboard and went into the cabin to change both herself and Gallo into dry clothes before heading ashore to attend Sabbath worship. Ruru-san, captain of the Malalagi, was noted as a great spear fisherman. He and his crew would often go fishing, sometimes in company with Colin. Musao men were generally clever with their homemade spear guns, and they were able to dive to incredible depths without breathing apparatus. On one occasion, Colin was fishing with Ruru-san when he saw him dive down the face of a huge coral reef that went down to a tremendous depth. Down, down, down he went with loaded spear gun in his right hand, propelling himself with his left hand and his legs. Eventually he stopped, stabilized himself, took aim, and fired his spear into a cavern under the coral. Now by this time he was running low on oxygen, so he began to ascend, using his left hand and legs to propel himself to the surface. Shooting up out of the water, he informed Colin he had shot a large grouper. Groupers can weigh as much as 88 pounds and grow to longer than 5 feet. Filling his lungs with air once more, he again dived to the depths and nosed into the grouper's lair. There he struggled to extricate his catch, using his legs as leverage against the entrance of the cavern. But the fish was having none of it. Colin had been watching this whole performance, wondering at the bravery of the man, or was it foolishness? The grouper could easily come out of its lair and disembowel him, but Ruru-san was determined. If he couldn't get the fish, at least he wanted his spear back. By this time he was out of oxygen again, and he rapidly ascended, hitting the surface with a roar and a gasp of air. He informed Colin the spear had penetrated the skull of the fish, and he doubted he'd be able to get the fish out, but was determined not to lose his sharpened, reinforcing rod homemade spear. So down he dove again, to a depth of at least 60 feet. Again he put his feet on each side of the entrance of the cavern and pulled and pulled. Eventually the spearhead came out and he returned to the surface, bitterly disappointed he had not succeeded in dragging the grouper out of the cavern. He would have gone down again if Colin had agreed to accompany him, feeling sure the two of them could extricate the huge fish, but Colin would have none of it. He knew he was out of his depth. When the Winch family was based at Maprik in the Sepik district of Papua New Guinea, they lived on the banks of a shallow river appropriately named the Screw River. It meandered down from the mountains across the elevated plains, through the hills, bending backwards and forwards like a screw. Heavy rains in the mountains would produce a bore, or a mini tidal wave, that would rush down the river within an hour or two, gathering momentum and size as it made its way through the bends. The roar of the approaching bore could be heard from some distance away, so Colin and Melva would stand by the church, built on an elevated bank adjacent to the river, to watch the increase in the flow of the shallow stream build up until around the bend would come a 3 or 4 foot high wave, rolling logs, timber, and debris before it. It was an awesome visual and audible reminder of the power of water, having the effect of temporarily isolating the mission station from the government station on the other side of the river. Colin noted all the timber being swept past. There were almost no trees useful for firewood on the mission station, so he decided it would be a great idea to lasso some of the passing logs and manhandle them ashore. Some ropes were prepared and logs snared, but the power of the water only dragged those people on the rope into the stream. Valuable ropes were lost. A better idea was to build a rock jetty diagonally across half of the river. As the water flowed around the curve in the river, it brought most of the debris onto the mission station side, so the jetty could trap some of the logs, thus providing a source of firewood. Rocks and stones were in plentiful supply in the river itself, so the rock wall was built when the water levels were low, and at the next big rainfall, the jetty was put to the test and proved a success. Young nationals would enter the eddying waters and grab the logs being directed toward the shore, hauling them up to dry land. The mission station was kept in firewood for the months of the dry season. There were times, however, when the flow of the river was too strong, and a national would be washed downstream before being able to scramble to shore again. Nonetheless, the idea of a jetty was deemed a great success. Be sure to tune in next time for more stories from the book Winchee by S Ross Goldstone, which is available at the Adventist Book Center. And meanwhile, check out these videos and others on my channel, with many more mission stories and Bible skits for kids and adults. God bless you.